Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. And today's episode is One Punch Man Ova Episode 10, Genos and Memory Loss. The episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happens in the episode. So the episode begins with Saitama struggling to open a bag of chips. Genos comes over to see what's happening, and then Saitama manages to open the chips, but they kind of explode everywhere. And then he, with his reflexes, lightning fast catches all of the chips, and then when he reaches one that had almost made it over his shoulder, he catches that, but he ends up knocking into Genos's head. And when Genos comes to, he has completely lost all of his memories and he starts to act somewhat like a child. And then it's realized that he's mimicking the child that is on the TV as Saitama was watching an educational program. Then he asks to read a manga and he starts to read the manga and suddenly he starts acting like a delinquent because the manga he was reading happened to have a delinquent character. Then Fubuki arrives and he starts acting like a playboy because the next manga in the book had a character that flirted with a girl. And Fubuki realizes that he, in fact, does have memory loss. And so she then decides to try to use that to her advantage, thinking that there's an opportunity at play. So she lures the Genos who has no memory but does kind of have a muscle memory still intact, to a warehouse where she tries to convince him that he's part of her gang, but he gets scared of having to fight because they try attacking him and runs off into the streets, where he then meets the Lord of the Mountains, who is a flying cat type creature that comes down and is upset with the humans who have, paved over the wilderness and lost animals their homes. And everybody like turns to him to help. So he then lures the Lord of the Mountains over to the warehouses where Fubuki was, thinking Fubuki can help, except she's no longer there because she had failed to trick him into thinking he was part of her gang. But as they're fighting, the Lord of the Mountains is able to alter the weather and he tries a wind attack, a hailstorm, and then eventually a lightning attack. And when the lightning attack hits Genos, he sparks. We see that he suddenly recalls his memories, almost like the lightning caused a reset or a reboot of his system. And having his memories back, he then defeats the monster and returns to Saitama's home where he apologizes for, his behaviors. And Saitama's like, yeah, it's fine. So that's what happened in this episode. And now it's time to rank the episode. And as always, we'll be ranking on our two lists, our mostly objective ranking list, followed by the personal ranking list. So on our mostly objective rank values, we had a couple that applied, and I highlighted those I felt applied to this episode. First, we of course had our single episode supporting character introduction, which was the Lord of the Mountains. However, we also did have some negative messaging or behavior, and this had to do with Fubuki trying to take advantage of Genos' memory loss to trick him into becoming part of her gang. I don't really know what she thought she would be able to accomplish because it's not like Saitama doesn't know who she is, or that Genos wouldn't at some point get his memory back and realize what she had done. So I think it works out for her that she failed in her endeavor. But I just feel like if somebody's in a vulnerable situation where they have amnesia or memory loss, taking advantage of that to your own benefit, not a good thing. It's not a good thing in this anime, and it's not a good thing in any other anime it takes place in. I feel like if somebody has lost their memory, even though some people think it's romantic and whatnot, like I know there's a few rom-coms that center around someone having amnesia, someone pretending to be somebody that they think about or taking on a role that they didn't actually have, and then they end up falling in love and ooh. But in reality, or in situations like this, I just think it's a bad thing to take advantage of someone's memory loss, especially when it's temporary. And even when it's permanent, but especially when it's temporary. And that's -2. So this episode actually ended up in the negatives, but the lowest score possible on our ranking list is a 1, and that makes it a 1 out of 10 episode. So that brings our overranking so far in our mostly objective ranking to Road to Hero, the murder case that is too impossible, the sisters who have too many things happening, the ninja who is too complicated, Saitama and the mediocre ability users, Bang who is too overbearing, a shadow that snuck up too close, the pupil who is an extremely poor talker, going fishing with middle-aged men, and then this episode is currently last, Genos and memory loss. That now brings us to the personal ranking, and I did find Genos without his memory to be amusing because he kept on taking the characters of whatever he saw or read last, first mimicking the boy on the TV, then the delinquent in the manga, followed by the playboy in the manga. I also found it was an interesting concept of him having still like the memory, like the muscle memory, except he doesn't have muscles, but basically his body was moving on its own to when it sensed higher energy levels, which is what brought it to Fubuki. And then later with the Lord of the Mountains, when he's able to get away from it. But at the same time, as entertaining as the personality switching was, like I said, Fubuki trying to take advantage of the amnesia, I didn't think that was a great idea or a great thing. It didn't really do much for her, the portrayal of her character. I also felt like the fight was pretty interesting because I really liked the Lord of the Mountains powers with being able to like control the weather. It could fly, wind, hail, lightning, like that's pretty impressive. But also it wasn't like I don't want to say it wasn't entertaining because it was one of the more entertaining fights and it was a cool villain. I liked the Lord of the Mountains, the design of it. Um But I wish that they had stuck to the comedic aspect of losing the memory rather than losing the memory, almost getting tricked, running into the streets, getting the memories back in a battle, and then going back. I kind of wish it had been like an episode that kind of took place inside Tama's apartment where he was just split personalitying from personality to personality to personality before maybe electrocuting himself on an electronic in the house or something and then getting his memories back and being like, oh wow, I was just acting real silly. That would have been more entertaining to me than the battle taking up most of the episode when he was working on instinct, and especially since when he doesn't have his memories. Well, actually, honestly, Genos is known for not being overly great at fighting, so I guess that was actually pretty in line with his character to be kind of getting booped around until he got the lightning strike and then he just incinerates it and goes home. But ultimately, I wished for a little bit more. However, that being said, I did still give it a 4 because I still did like the episode and especially the comedic aspect of the split personalities. And so and first we have A Shadow That Snuck Up Too Close, Saitama and the Mediocre Ability Users, Road to Hero, The Murder Case That Is Too Impossible, The Sisters Who Have Too Many Things Happening, The Pupil Who Is an Extremely Poor Talker, Genos and Memory Loss is in 7th place, that's this episode. Then we have Bang, who is too overbearing, The Ninja, who is too complicated, and then Going Fishing with Middle-Aged Men in 10th. That brings us now to our series rankings so far. Season 1 on our mostly objective is 88.33%, Season 2 at 74.17%, with the OVAs at 36 out of 130 so far. Our personal ranking had Season 1 at 76.67%, Season 2 at 65.83%, and then the OVA so far is at 46 out of 130, And with that, we've rewatched and ranked One Punch Man Ova episode 10, Genos and Memory Loss. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.